Hello, this is a video on how to play the card game Gin Rummy. Now, Gin Rummy is a variation of Rummy, but it is different enough in that it's its own separate game. And so there are many variations of the rules for Gin Rummy, and we'll be using a common set of rules. And so there are some vocabulary terms that I will use in this video, and let me just define them initially. And so a set is 3 or 4 cards of the same rank, and so that could be um, an 8 of hearts, an 8 of spades, an 8 of diamonds, right? So that's 3 cards of the same rank. Or you could also have 4 cards of the same rank, so that would be a queen of hearts, a queen of spades, a queen of diamonds, and a queen of clubs. A run is 3 or more cards in sequence in the same suit. And so, for example, that would be an ace of hearts, a 2 of hearts, a 3 of hearts, or a 6 of clubs, a 7 of clubs, an 8 of clubs, a 9 of clubs, a 10 of clubs. Aces are always low, and they're never high. And runs can't wrap around, and so queen, king, ace, and 2 would not be a legal run, right? Because after the king, you can't wrap back around to the ace. So it's not a full circle. A meld, melds refer to is just the overall group of sets and runs. And so if you have a meld, that could be either a set or a run. And so you could have 3 melds, where 2 melds are sets and 1 meld is a run. Each card can only be part of 1 meld. And so let's, for example, if you have an 8, you cannot count it as both part of an 8-8-8 set and a 7-8-9 sequence run. You could count it as either part of the 8-8-8 or the 7-8-9, but not both. A stock is a deck of face-down cards in the middle of the table, so that would be this deck of cards right here. Players draw 1 card from the stock in every round. The discard pile is a pile of face-up cards placed next to the stock. Players discard 1 card onto the discard pile in every round. Deadwood is it refers to any cards in your hand that are not part of a meld. Knocking is ending the round by putting a card face down on the discard pile. Um, Going gin is when all 10 cards in your hand are part of melds and you have no deadwood. Um, Going big gin is when all 10 cards in your hand and the card you just drew are parts of melds. So you have 11 cards all in melds. And so it's basically like gin, in which all your cards are in melds, but you have 11 cards instead of 10 cards in meld, so you have an additional card part of a meld. And layoff is adding your deadwood cards to an opponent's meld. And so the objective of Gin Rummy is to collect cards into melds and have as little deadwood as possible at the end of a game. The game is scored based on how much deadwood you have at the end of a game. And a game can span several rounds, and it's over when one player reaches 100 points. At that point, the grand total for each player is calculated, and the player with the highest score wins the entire game. And so, in terms of the gameplay, so each player gets 10 cards, and so let's just deal. Each player gets 10 cards, 1 card at a time. And so the remaining deck is put on the table between the players face down, and 1 card is put face up besides the deck to start the discard pile. So the 3 of clubs is put up face up besides the deck to start the discard pile. In each turn, a player must start by drawing 1 card. He can draw either the top card from the deck or the top card from the discard pile. In terms of the first card, both players have the choice if they want to draw the flipped up card if they choose to, or they can pass. If both players pass, then the game just starts normally. And so a player must start by drawing 1 card. He can either draw the top card from the deck or the top card from the discard pile. So I can either draw the king of spades or this flipped face down card. You only draw the top card from the discard pile if you know that the card will help you create a meld. And so if the card won't really help you create a meld, then you really don't want it. And so I'm actually going to draw the top card because I have a king of diamonds. And so I know that this card will help me create a meld, right? No matter what. And so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to draw the king of spades. Why? I have a king here, and I am aiming for 3 kings or more, right, to form a set. Now, um, in the first turn, like I said, the starting player must choose to either draw the face-up card in the board or pass the turn. If the card is drawn, proceed normally. If the turn is passed, the other player then gets to choose whether they want to draw the face card or pass the turn. If they pass 2, then the first player takes their turn normally. It's just a little, I guess, addition in Gin Rummy. After the player has drawn a card, he must discard 1 card by putting it face up on top of the discard pile. And so you can discard a card you have just drawn from the stockpile or any other card. Note that we cannot discard the card we just drew, and so we wouldn't be able to discard the king of spades because that doesn't make sense, right? If you wanted to discard it, why would you draw it? And so you discard either the card you just drew from the stockpile or a card from your hand. Not a card that you've already seen because you already knew that card, and so discarding it doesn't really make any sense. And so we will discard here the. We don't really have many diamonds, and so I'm going to discard the 6 of diamonds. And so there's the queen of clubs. And so the game continues, right? Just drawing and discarding cards. It's quite simple. And players try to build sets and runs in their hand. And so that's what we are going to do here. And so let's just continue playing the game. And then when we get towards the end, we'll highlight more aspects of the game. And so I'm going to take this queen of clubs. Why? I have a jack of clubs, so I have a potential sequence there, and I already have a queen, and so I have a potential to build a set there. I have to discard a card from my hand. I'm going to go with the 9 of, well, actually the 9 and the 8 are together there. I'm going to go with the this is interesting. I'm going to go with the. This is interesting. The 7 of hearts. So now we have the 8 of clubs. I'm going to draw that. Why? I have an 8 here and I have a 7 of clubs there. That is a potential to form a sequence. And so what we'll do here is we'll say, hey, I have to discard a card here. I'm going to go with my my ace, simply because if I get a jack of spades or a 10 of spades, I have a potential for a nice long sequence here. And so I'm just going to discard my ace. So that's a 5 of clubs. We don't really want that, so we're going to draw the top card. We want to keep that, right? Why? Because that's 3 right there. That's a meld, right? That's a meld right there. And so unfortunately, it's not sorting like I normally would. I'm going to discard this 3. That's a 4. I wouldn't help us. I'm going to discard that too because it's not helping me. That's an 8 of diamonds. I can take that to make another meld. Now I must discard another card. Well, I will go with the we'll just go with the 7 of clubs. That's a 6 of spades. No, I don't really need that ace of hearts, and so I'm going to put it back. That's an 8 again, and so I'm going to take that 8 of hearts. Right, that's a 4. That's a set of 4. Now we have to discard another card. I'm going to go with the 9 of spades here. Well, now let's talk about what happened. So we just played the game, and you saw the game play out, right, like it normally would. And now Bill knocked. And so what is knocking? Well, knocking is when a player discards a card and puts it face down on the discard pile. Um, this means that the player that knocked, or the knocker, shows his melds and his deadwood by putting it face up on the table. And so the opponent is allowed to lay off any of his deadwood by the opponent is allowed to lay off any of his deadwood onto the knocker's melds if he can. And so here's my deadwood, right? The deadwood is the cards that are not. I guess the deadwood refers to the cards that are not part of a melder set. In this case, I can lay it off by adding my deadwood to any of his melds or any of his existing cards. A jack, a queen, and a queen cannot join any of these, right? They cannot join any of these sets. And so I would not be able to lay off any of my deadwood. So in a case where you would be able to lay off, if the knocker had a meld, right? So if Bill, since he was the knocker, if he had a meld of ace of hearts, two of hearts, three of hearts, and I had a four of hearts, I could add it to his meld, add it to his sequence, and it wouldn't count as deadwood for me anymore. The knocker can never lay off their deadwood. The laying off the deadwood is only an advantage for the player who did not knock. If the knocker has Gin or Big Gin, then the opponent is not allowed to lay off any cards. And so you can only knock if you end up with 10 or fewer points of deadwood. And so Bill's deadwood, his card's not part of a meld or any meld, is just the 3 of diamonds. And so his deadwood adds up to less than 10. Human cards count as 10 for deadwood. Aces count as 1 for deadwood. All other cards count as their numeric values. And so since he has a 3, that counts as 3 towards deadwood. And so since he has less than 10 points of deadwood, he can knock. So the card you knock with is not included in that number. And so if you have just drawn and you have 3, 5, 9 as deadwood, you would be allowed to knock with the 9, placing it face down on the discard pile, and then you'd end up with 3 plus 5 equals 8 points as deadwood. And so let's say Bill had an 8 here. And so knocking or going Gin or going Big Gin is when all of the cards in your hand are part of a meld, and so you have no deadwood. If you have no deadwood, and so if you go Gin or Big Gin, then the opposing player cannot lay off any cards. The round ends, and note that if you go Big Gin, you don't have to discard any card onto the deck. And well, note that also if you have both players in a tie, and this happens when neither player has knocked and there are only 2 cards left in the deck. And so if there are only 2 cards left in the stock deck over here, and neither player has knocked, then no player gets any points for that round, and it ends in a stalemate. And so let's just talk about the points you can get. And so the knocker scores the difference between his deadwood and the opponent's deadwood. And so his deadwood was 3. My deadwood was 30, right? 10, 10, 10 for each face card. 30 minus 3 is 27. And so the person who knocked scores the points by subtracting their opponent's deadwood from their deadwood. If you go Gin, you get 25 extra points added to the difference in your deadwood, added to the knock points you already get. And so let's say you go Gin. You have no deadwood, right? And so the points you score would just be the sum of your opponent's deadwood plus 25 points. If you go Big Gin, once again, you have no deadwood, and so there's no difference, and so it would just be the sum of your opponent's deadwood plus 31 extra points. And there's also something called undercut. And so if a player knocks, but the opponent has less or equal deadwood, then the opponent gets 25 points plus the difference in deadwood. And so let's say I knocked, but my opponent has less or equal deadwood. In this case, he has less deadwood. Then my opponent would get 25 points plus the difference in deadwood. And so he would get 25 plus 27 points. And I would end up with 0 points. And so note that be careful with knocking. You want to make sure that you have less deadwood than your opponent. Um, the game bonus, and after a player has reached 100 points, he gets another 100 points added to his overall score. There's also a shutout bonus. And so if the winner wins every single round in the game, then the points are doubled. I mean, this wouldn't really affect it because if you win every single round, you'd win the game anyway. And so the only real, I guess that's only if you just want to keep track of a high score. But the only points you need to worry about in terms of winning, are the knock points, which are the difference in deadwood between your and your opponent's deadwood. When you go gin, when you go big gin, and undercutting. When you knock, even though you have less you have more deadwood points, so you have more deadwood. Then your opponent gets 25 points plus the difference in deadwood. Other than that, the mainly just focus on knock points. Note that gin, it's 25 points plus the knock points. Big Gin is 31 points plus the knock points. And Undercut is 25 points plus the difference in Deadwood for the person who did not knock. And so that's essentially how to play Gin Rummy. We'll play one more round just to show you. But this will be a quick round with no commentary, just so you can actually really see how to play. And so let's just go through a quick round here. And so a 2, I do have a 2 there. And so actually we will do some commentary. I just think it's beneficial. So we'll pass. Actually, we'll draw it. Now I must discard a card from my hand. We'll go with a 5. That's an ace. I'm going to take that. And I'll discard discard a jack. That's a 9 of clubs, so I'm not going to take that, so I'm just going to take a 9 of spades. That's another meld. 6, 7, 8, can't discard that. An ace. An ace. We'll discard the 6 of diamonds here. Actually, we'll discard the 6 of diamonds, yeah. And so he went gin. He has no deadwood. And so not only does he score the difference in our deadwood, and so he has 0 deadwood. So 1, 2, 3, 4 minus 0 is 4 points right there. He also scores an additional 25 points for going gin, which is having 10 cards all in melds. And so that sums up how to play Gin Rummy. It's quite a simple game, and it's very, 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 very fun. And I hope you guys learned a fun, exciting new card game.